Welcome everyone to the Design Thinking lecture. Design thinking is a word that you might have stumbled across in many different disciplines. It is not entirely limited to design as an area of knowledge at all. And that is probably why you have found it in the first place. I tend to tell people to take notes when I hold these lectures in actual auditoriums, but don't worry about it. You won't need to take notes on this one because you own this presentation now, don't you? You can always come back to it and halt it if you want to, pause it, take notes there. Right, I'm going to give you a complete overview of what design thinking is. And that also means I need to tell you a few things that design thinking is not, because there are a lot of mix-ups going on, and design thinking is a very clearly defined thing, and it is, for example, not design methods, and it is not design process. So in case somebody told you that, it's wrong. I'll show you what these two are. Design methods are techniques that designers use to do stuff. So for example, the creation of user profiles, benchmarking, model making, prototyping, building CAD models, you name it. These are design methods. This is something designers do to drive their projects forward. And the design process is how all these things on the left come together, how they're orchestrated, what is first, what is second, what goes where. Design processes have been written about by a number of people. I'm just throwing a few in the mix here without losing too much time on that, because we aren't here to discuss design processes, but we are here to talk about design thinking, right? So I'll go to the next one. Just to reiterate, design thinking uses design methods and employs design processes, but it is not the same as design methods, and it is not the same as design processes. Okay, design thinking is a thing in its own right, and we're going to look at it in depth in this presentation here. The best way to describe design thinking is as a design-specific cognitive activity that designers apply during the process of designing. In order to be able to be a successful design thinker, you need to have three skills or three traits, if you will. One is you need to have empathy to understand the problem context. Sometimes problem contexts go much deeper than you might be used to. They might involve people, they might involve chains of actions. You need to have creativity to generate insights and solutions. If you don't have it, don't worry. Design thinking can bring you that, but we're going to get to that. And then you need to be rational so that you can do analysis and find the right fitting solution to the context. Now you might think, oh, cool, I can do all these three already. I don't actually need to see any more of this. But bear with me, you will probably think differently at the end of this. So these three make up the key abilities for successful design thinkers. And now that I've touched on, do we need this or not? Yeah, the question is, do we need to educate anybody about design thinking? After all, mankind has been making things, creating things quite successfully for a long, long time. Now, this is an old stone tool, and you might argue that whoever made this had enough empathy to understand what this was for, had the creativity to find a way to make this, and was quite rational in the way they made it. True. The thing is, though, when these first experiments started, you would probably have seen that some tribes were able to make these stone tools perhaps thousands of years before others. The length of human history is quite a surprise to some people, and we are thinking basically if everybody had the ability to maximize their design thinking, perhaps we would have had advanced civilization at a much earlier stage than we did. We're basically saying we know humans or beings similar to humans have been around for about 5 million years. And the first of these tools popped up about 2.5 million years ago. What if people had been more capable of design thinking 5 million years ago? Where would we be now? Would we be 2.5 million further ahead than we are as a civilization? I think it's quite possible. So we are saying the dissemination of design thinking can help accelerate innovation in less innovative fields or environments. And that is the main thing about design thinking. It is something we are taking elsewhere. It is called the design thinking export phenomenon. And it basically means we designers or design academics try to share how we do stuff with individuals and businesses that normally don't do it that way for their benefit, because there are certain advantages to the way we do things, and we believe that anyone could probably benefit from this. So we explain our stuff in the hope that others will have an improved problem-solving ability and will be able to ideate better. Before we delve into it, let's see where it all began. It hasn't been around for a very long time as an art in its own right. There was a book in 1969, a book in 1973. Then that was added to in the 80s and 90s. And there came another book and symposium on it in 1991. So it's been a while in the making, and people never took it very seriously. Up until, I would say, around 2000. So it's a fairly fresh and new thing. And if you're looking for an area where you can be a bit of a pioneer, this may well be it still, even at this stage, 2017. The people who shaped this and began this, started it all, were most notably Richard Buchanan. Richard Buchanan is, well, the person who basically came up with the term wicked problems. A wicked problem is a problem that we don't have an existing solution for. And it is contrasted with tame problems. Now, tame problem is a problem that people have solved before, and if you can solve it in the same way, you're a good person. Yeah, but it's relatively easy because you just need to learn how to do it. Now, a wicked problem is a problem that nobody has solved before, and that is so badly defined that you don't even know what exactly it consists of. And this is the kind of problem that we're all facing in life, in business, in whatever. And design thinking can be pretty good at helping you get through that. Lawson did an interesting little study in 1979, and I'm showing you this in order to make you understand how differently people tend to think, and not just people, but groups of professionals. So what Lawson did is he created two focus groups. One was comprised entirely of scientists, and the other was comprised entirely of architects, creatives. Now, I can already preempt the outcome here. What he found out was that the scientists were very much problem-based solvers, whereas the architects were very much solution-based solvers. So when you're a scientist, You're basically saying there is a problem to be solved. And when you are a creative or an architect, you're saying actually there is a solution to be achieved. So these are two very different approaches when you think about it. What these two groups were then given is a challenge of, I think they were Legos, building bricks, and they were supposed to build a little house model. They got exactly the same Legos, and they were expected to build pretty much the same kind of house. Now, let's look at the way these two different groups did their stuff. The scientists went at it scientifically, which means they tried out as many different options as possible to find the governing principle which allowed them for an optimized little house, building process of the little house. Whereas the architects directly selected the components that allowed them to achieve the objective directly. So there's the difference. The two approaches are respectively called analysis and synthesis. The scientists went the analytical way, the architects went and synthesized. Just to be a little bit geeky here, analysis means to loosen up, and synthesis means to put together. So that is one big difference in the thinking styles that many professions have. And we designers would associate more with the synthetic way of doing this, the synthesizing, whereas a lot of other professions are more analytical. So when you're analytical, you are breaking down an intellectual or substantial whole into parts or components in the hope to achieve a greater understanding. And when you're synthesizing, you are combining separate elements or components in order to form a coherent whole. The basic starting points, respectively, are that when you're analyzing, you're just trying to understand. But when you're synthesizing, you are going for a solution. You are trying to conclude. Logically, it's probably much quicker. You do need both, obviously, if you're going to be scientific about things. And the question may well be, didn't the architects analyze anything at all? How did they work then? And the answer is, of course, they also analyzed, but they didn't analyze from the beginning. They analyzed from the perspective of an end goal. So they were like, we know what this is going to be. Let's find what will make this. Okay. So if you're going completely analytically and scientifically about it, it's just simply, there's this first step where everything will simply be taken apart. And that costs a lot of time and it delays the time until you reach an outcome. Whereas if you design think immediately, you don't care about understanding the bits. You just go make what you can with what you have. This also links in nicely with a bit of psychological theory. There is the divergent thinking versus the convergent thinking. Divergent thinking means you're creating lots and lots of ideas. The convergent thinking means there is only one appropriate solution, and you're going straight for that. I'm not saying you can only use one of these because actually you need both. So if you're going to do some design thinking, first you need to create lots of different ideas, which is what the design thinkers would do at the same time at which the analytical people would probably be wasting their time trying to understand stuff. So while the others are trying to understand, we're already creating ways forward. And then out of all the different ways forward that we design thinkers have created, we pick the best one. So that is really how it works. There is a step 1 and a step 2 to design thinking, like I just explained. You need to crank up a few of your traits if you want to do this well. Obviously, if you're creative, you need to use that. You need to get into the habit of building up ideas. Make stacks of ideas. Don't just use the one that you seem to have, or don't just wait for one idea and act on it. Create several, create more, create a pool of ideas, and do it fast. And don't edit, okay? No judging at that stage. You just keep building the pile. You put the good and the bad and the crazy and the weird and the great all together, because what you're creating is a pool of lots and lots of ideas. And you don't care about failure, okay, right now, because it's still just about collecting ideas. And who knows, even the stupidest idea might be pretty amazing if you put it together with another stupid idea. Maybe two stupid ideas together make a great idea. Give yourself that chance. You will need to make sure that everyone involved will give as much input as you can get out of them. And you also need to have participation, lots of participation of everybody involved while you ideate and while the prototypes are made. And in the end, the main thing is that everybody is ready to do what they don't normally do. Think outside the box. Make the unusual step. Why not? If we go into applications of design thinking now, you'll basically find that these 5 words here are the key words. So the key values that you've got to have to be able to do design thinking properly are creativity. You need to be able to think ambidextrously, which means you use your left brain half and your right brain half equally. So you're going to be as artistic as you are rational. You need to have the whole team on board. You need to be curious, and you always need to keep in mind where it's going to end up, where you want it to end up, who is the end user. This is a good possible 7-stage process you can run for your design thinking process. First, you define. You define the issues that are to be solved. You define the audience you're doing your work for. You're defining how urgent the problem needs to be, or how urgent the solution is needed. You're defining what it would mean to be successful. You're defining any requirements that you can foresee, and you're defining a glossary of words that team members might need who have not been on board with the research and development effort so far. Then you get into research. When you're researching, you are researching what happened in the past, who the users have traditionally been, what rivals there might be, who supports them and why, which investors have classically been taking up the help, and what the critics had to say. Then you start ideating. Now, when you ideate, you don't judge, okay? You don't judge and you don't debate, you just ideate, which means you create ideas, and you don't stop and you don't doubt and you don't ask anybody's opinion, you just keep going. And you create lists of needs, lists of ideas, and you keep a brainstorming log of all that, okay? Maybe by video, maybe on paper. And next, you start building some prototypes. You may refine the prototypes as you make more prototypes. You collect feedback. You maybe create a proposal. You hold some presentations. So the whole prototyping stage can last as long as it lasts. And then you pick your best performer of among the prototypes. Obviously, you use objective criteria and you become strategic about it because that prototype could well turn into your final piece. And then things get implemented with all the usual planning and resource acquisition and tasks assignments and manifestations that come with implementing and making something. And you might learn something from that in the end for next time and for improvements. Okay, so these are the the 7 stages that design thinking would go through. Let's take a look at these wicked and tame problems in a bit more detail. A wicked problem, like I said before, is an ill-defined problem. It is not well understood, and there is no known solution. And a typical example for it would be poverty. Poverty is just one word and it stands for a lot of things, and therefore this is a wicked problem. And in contrast, a tame problem would be chess. There are rules. Yes, there are many ways of playing chess, and you can have all these different maneuvers, but still, it is all perfectly well defined. The problem is known, and we know what to do. So, playing chess or solving mathematical formula, that is a very tame problem that you can learn. In design thinking, you need to be able to deal with tame problems and wicked problems, and you also need to have this instinct. Instinct isn't something you would normally trust very much, but keep in mind that your subconscious knows a lot of things that your conscious isn't aware of. So having a hunch about something isn't entirely wrong. And when you look at the way chess players play, I think I read a study once where it said that when you watch a young chess player play, they're very anxious about each move and they're really only thinking ahead 1, 2, maybe 3 moves. Whereas a well practiced chess player will just really go by his feelings because he has internalized what happens so well that he doesn't have to painstakingly map out all the different possibilities. He just feels what might happen. I know this sounds esoteric, but those of you who have experienced it will know what I mean. You will have resistance to design thinking. Obviously, not everybody is immediately on board with this kind of thing. I have to admit, I wasn't either. When I first heard about design thinking, I thought, some new gimmick now to make money. But I'll spell them out for you. So resistance is obviously a typical hindrance to working with design thinking with your team, or if you're going to be a design thinking coach and you take it to a company or to an organization of some kind, you will have probably to a certain degree all these things here on this page against you. There might be resistance from, there might be internal psychological resistance because perhaps some people don't like the word design. Understandable. There might be disruptions. Yeah, you're holding your workshop and people just keep getting phone calls. There might be interpersonal friction. Sometimes we don't get on very well with everybody. Or there might not be any clear goal. Why are you doing this workshop with these people from that company? I suppose there should be something there. Some carrot should be dangled, like you give them a certificate or You promise them that something can be resolved through this workshop, and you actually resolve that through that workshop. There can be fear. You'll probably find that if you are using a design thinking workshop to work on an actual problem a company has, then there will be doubters, there will be people who worry about budgets and responsibilities, and obviously procrastination, waiting for somebody else to say something and make a move. You may also come across that devil's advocate participant who um, won't really contribute much other than criticism. Sometimes that's useful, but like I showed before, especially if you're in the ideation phase of your design thinking workshop, you don't want anybody being critical and preventing ideation. So these are the three enemies of design thinking, and you probably cannot avoid them. You just need to be aware that they probably will be there, and you'll have to have your own strategies to deal with them. A bit of background on who brought design thinking to us. There's this man, John Chris Jones, a design science theorist. And he was the first to make this interesting statement. He said, design is not like the arts, sciences, and mathematics. And I find that very refreshing because you'll probably know that design is usually being lumped at least either with the arts or sciences. And it actually doesn't really fit that well. Now, he further says both artists and scientists operate on the physical world as it exists in the present, whether it is real or symbolic, while mathematicians operate on abstract relationships that are independent of historical time. Designers, on the other hand, are forever bound to treat as real that which only exists in an imagined future and have to specify ways in which the foreseen thing can be made to exist. So that is a major difference. It means we live in the future. Designers live in the future. It's the place where we look. It's like driving a car. It's almost a bit like all the other sciences, or sorry, all the other disciplines would be like drivers who look in the rearview mirror a lot. And we designers are like drivers who don't care about our rearview mirrors too much. There is another man, Nigel Cross, who wrote the book Designerly Ways of Knowing. And he pointed out these interesting differences between the disciplines. He basically said the phenomenon of study in each culture is. Now, in the sciences, it is the natural world that attracts all your interest. In the humanities, you're all concerned about the human experience. And in design, it's the artificial world that captures your interest. I find that a very nice, simple picture to understand where we all sit. Now, the appropriate methods that are used in each of these study cultures are: in the sciences, if you're going to be scientific about the way you do your project, you will do controlled experiments, you will classify, you will analyze. If you're in the humanities, you will try to evaluate, you will try to create analogies and metaphors. And if you're a designer, you're into coming up with a synthesis, making models, finding, recognizing, forming patterns. As for the values, scientists value objectivity, rationality, neutrality, and a concern for truth. The humanity people value subjectivity, imagination, commitment, and a concern for justice. And design are all about practicality, ingenuity, empathy, and a concern for appropriateness. So you can see how we would all run projects very differently. And it is this last statement here that shows in a more neutral, objective way what it is that we try to bring to you guys through design thinking. And we're bringing that to the business world mostly. Just to quickly recoup, as a designer, you can bring your methods to business in two ways. Either you participate in the actual business process and train business people to use the design methods, or you just work in your craft as a designer and you achieve an innovative output for the company. So A means you try to reform the minds of people so that they become more like designers in their thinking, and B means you reform nobody. You just do your job and you do the job a designer does. We designers, I should say, are being seen by management theory as follows. Designers are considered part of the architecture, design, and anthropology paradigm. And we're considered to be innovative, human-centered, and entrepreneurial. There is a sense that designers propagate a collaborative and iterative style of work, which means we do stuff with other people together. We try things again and again, and we will try to get people into an abductive mode of thinking, which means we will try to take people where they haven't gone before. In that way, we are different from the more traditional practices, such as mathematics, economics, psychology. And it is usually certain companies, or a certain kind of company, that would be open to design thinking and deploying more design thinking. Most famously, I would say Toyota has been like this, who really value the creativity and the input of all of their workers, no matter what their position is. Now, as for the history of design thinking, you'll probably remember that during the First and especially Second World War, there were a lot of things, a lot of problems that had to find instant solutions, such as dogs were used in the war effort, but gas was also used by the enemy. So what did we do? We made gas masks for the dogs, right? So this is a typical way to apply straightforward design thinking. We need the dog to survive. We have a gas mask that accomplishes this in people. Let's put a gas mask on a dog. In the 1950s, that kind of concerted creative effort was still very much alive when the war had ended. And it trickled into the business world and the corporate world. So suddenly you had all these operational research methods that had their roots in the war effort. And management decision-making techniques came up, creativity techniques came up. This was all to do with motivating large bodies of people to create an output along a certain strand of requirements. Then in the 1960s, we saw the first computers trying to create problem-solving approaches. And we saw interesting authors pointing the way forward. I suppose the advent of science fiction was very much a design thinking sort of thing. Yeah, suddenly people were dreaming about the future. That in itself, I think, is very much design thinking. So more and more things started happening with people writing books and holding conferences and speaking about that different thinking style. That there was this man, Christopher Alexander, an architect and design theorist, who was really very much disappointed with the stodgy, stuffy thinking of his field at the time. He said, there is so little in what is called design methods that has anything useful to say about how to design buildings that I never even read the literature. Never even read the literature anymore. I would say forget it, forget the whole thing. And John Chris Jones, whose name we've seen before, the design theorist, says, I dislike the machine language, the behaviorism, the continual attempt to fix the whole of life into a logical framework, which is obviously what we're all trying to do when we're being systematic about stuff, but as design thinkers, we avoid it. Bruce Archer, another architect and design theorist, said, there exists a designerly way of thinking and communicating that is both different from scientific and scholarly ways of thinking and communicating, and as powerful as scientific and scholarly methods of inquiry when applied to its own kinds of problems. Along came this thing, Six Sigma, a business management strategy. You could read up on that if you like. This is a very useful thing to know. And then finally, in the 1980s, we had Peter Rowe, a professor at Harvard, using the term design thinking for the first time. In 1991, the company IDEO was formed. They're a very important company in this whole design thinking racket. And Richard Buchanan published that article on wicked problems that we've seen before. And then after 2000, we had these three guys here, and they founded the world's first service design company named Live Work in London, and it still exists to this day as of 2017. So if anybody is interested in talking to people of the first hour, see if you can find these guys online somewhere. And this is design thinking from me. I hope you found this somewhat useful. You may want to revisit maybe the first few minutes of this, explaining all the different steps and methods. But it is generally a fairly wide and free thing. And in the end, it's about remembering maybe your childhood, being normal again and and just going straight for the result. That is design thinking. Thank you, and all the best in your studies.